Okay, we will call the special council meeting for Tuesday, November 15th to order. The purpose of the meeting is for 2023 budget discussion. Jenny.
Thank you, Mayor Ryan. Good evening, members of the council. I will do just a quick overview for you of this special meeting budget workshop for tonight, and then we'll turn it over to staff to walk through their final proposed budgets. So the first three items we have will be final presentations with respect to our enterprise funds from the pickle, spirits, and sewer. We don't oftentimes circle back with those departments to have a final conversation, just check in on how, especially for pickle and spirits, how their summer went, things like that, and what they're planning for next year. So we thought we'd take an opportunity to do that. With that, we will have, with our sewer conversation, we'll make sure to touch on the 2023 rate recommendation that is in your regular packet. But should you have questions or we need to have a discussion about adjusting what the recommendation is, we can do that at the workshop here. And then with, I believe, spirits, Brian will also touch on his building matrix that he has put together for you. Tom will follow those conversations with a more detailed update on the building matrix information that he put together. He put together a very detailed report and some spreadsheets to accompany. There are other spreadsheets, but I just provided you the high level ones so you can get a sense for what he's seeing and how he put things together. So we can spend some time talking about that so you can understand the information that he put together for you. I think this is the very beginning of a bigger conversation with respect to our buildings and infrastructure that I would recommend the next council starting in January, sit down, and whether we have a workshop or some kind of retreat or something, we need to talk about planning and how we take this information and use it to the best for the community moving forward. So I think this isn't the details for tonight isn't impacting your 2023 budget, but it is something for you to have information to make sure you understand, ask questions, and we'll continue that on next year if that works for the council. Following that, I will have some general fund budget updates. And so I'll go through, I have a list of 4 things plus the budget packet that I provided to you. So I will just walk through each one in sequence and we will go through those items as well. And then hopefully at the end of it, we'll feel good about where we are sitting currently, and that will let us prepare for our Truth and Taxation meeting in December and adopting the final budget. Any questions for me before we get started? Perfect. Well, I think with that, we're going to start with the pickle and a quick update from Terry.
All right, good evening. Budget meeting number, whatever it is, I don't know, 4. Yeah, I think we'll get it. We'll get it. So I met with Jennifer and Maggie here a week ago, 10 days ago or something, whatever it was. And we decided on raising, let's see, 1, 2, 3 items. Item number number 210, the operating supplies. We're going to raise that another 12,000. So instead of the budget of 28, we're going to bump it up to 40. Pickle nickels, we're going to raise that another 5,000 up to 25,000. And entertainment expense, we're going to bump that up to 20,000 instead of 14,000. So, or is that 14? We're going to bump it up to 20, another 6,000. So far, everything's going good this year. We had a great summer. Lots of fun events with the Freedom Day Parade and 4th of July, which is the biggest day of the year this year. And considering that was on a Sunday, it was amazing. Nisswa Lightning took #1 in the state for Class C basketball or baseball. So that was fun watching those guys perform. Every Wednesday was busy with the turtle races. You got 600 little ruggers in town, and their parents would have, terrible thirst bringing those kids to town. So they'd stop by the watering hole and have a beverage. Bourbon sales have slowed down due to supply chain issues, things like that. So we're doing some different things with that. Also too, with the increase in expenses, might look at maybe increasing drink prices in the bar, maybe after the first of the year. If you go to local bars around here, you go to Breezy Point. Tito's is $8. We're at $4.50. I don't know what it is at Zorba's.
Probably higher.
Probably higher, So there's a window there where you could raise another 50 cents a drink, and people from the cities, they don't care, They come in and they go, oh my gosh, that's the price of one drink, and they've gotten 2 or 3. Tap beer is your largest profit margin. So there's always room there. We're already making over $3 a bottle on beer. So there's, each bottle costs us 70 cents. We're charging $3.75. Be nothing to go up another quarter on that too. So if things like that need to happen, we'll make it happen. So the food costs this summer, we went up $1 on every item except French fries, because the cost went up extremely a lot. So there's always room for change. So you guys have any questions for me tonight?
No, it looks good. Good to me.
Careful out there. It's going to get slippery.
Yes, it is.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Quick comment if I could. So you'll notice that the pickle budget has increased its capital reserve, which is appropriate, and they still have a nice profit showing for their budget for next year, but that will play into, it's a small amount relative to the building matrix conversation that we'll have later, but we are making an effort to continue to put money into that. So we can start to build that fund a little bit more. So that is incorporated into the budget.
I noticed that the budget and the actual, well, up to October anyway, it's basically right on target, basically. Yeah. So.
Okay. Next up, sewer. Am I reading that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Well, good evening, everybody. I think the main thing most of you are interested in is what the rate increase should be. And I think you have documentation showing that would be 5% for next year. Earlier, we had projected that would be probably much higher, more like 9.5%. But one of the things that has changed over the years, we thought we would be looking at building a new lift station and some related expenses to that. So without that, our budget has been able to shrink some. There's still some operating expenses going forward. We haven't totally taken out that project. We recognize that it may come back in a few years. So, but in the short term, at least, we think we were able to show a modest increase relative in 2022 of 5%. And so I think that's what we're looking to do. There's not a lot that's changed. We had a pretty big year last year with the sewer expansion itself of the treatment plant. The only thing that I can point to that we're really doing different for 23 is adding a summer employee part-time. Are there any specific questions any of you have?
That would put us at 2 summer employees, right?
One in maintenance and one in sewer, yeah.
One in sewer, yeah, one. We don't.
I think part of that is, you'll see that the fund is showing a loss for the year, not significant, but we really try to be conservative with what we think we'll get for new connections and things like that, just so we're not overshooting and hoping for a best case scenario when you might have a decline in a year that's things slow down more than maybe you anticipate. So we'd rather, I mean, and this is essentially it's break even, it's pretty close. It can be, you know, one purchase either way that makes a difference for that. But that's partially why that is we just want to make sure that we are maintaining the fund conservative on the revenue side, just so we don't overextend. As Tom mentioned, we will have some projects coming up in the next
Right.
handful of years as we're trying to work out timing. We don't really know. So.
Our next big project coming up, regardless of what happens with growth of the city, would be lift station number 1 refurbishment. Probably in 2024 is what we're anticipating that would be. So that project will cost something similar to the lift station 3 that we just recently did. We would be adding backup generation, larger pumps, bigger wet well, upgrading the electronics for reliability.
You know, one question I had was that about the debt service. Is that done in chunks or is that monthly, the debt service that we pay?
There's 2 payments a year. We have 2 interest payments a year, 1 principal payment a year.
Okay, yeah. Then that sort of explains what I'm seeing here. Yeah.
Any questions or concerns on the rate recommendation?
See it.
Okay, good. We thought that was a good place to land. I think that worked well, all things
The
considered.
connection fee stayed the same, right?
Yeah, we're holding them even for now.
Okay.
Thank you.
With our sales, if we look at this year, I don't know how we're doing it, but we are up from last year. That's incredible. I still sometimes wonder if those numbers are real or not, but paper shows that it is. So we're up. I just looked the other day, we're up about $2,000 and that was in the report. So I thought it would take us 5 years to get to this point, and it didn't. So hopefully we'll keep going the same direction. Now, for next, I'm always very, what's the word? Hesitant to predict huge sales. So I'm just averaging, I have 4.7 or 4.07 for an increase on sales. Every year, we've outperformed what I have on the budget by quite a bit. And I am anticipating the same thing next year. I like to be conservative on the budget. Sometimes Jenny and Maggie get on me about it. That's the way I've always done it. Maybe I'll change. But is there any questions on the budget?
I like it that you're conservative.
Thank you.
Mhm.
We don't foresee any rent change with the Schaefer's building.
I think our rent change is set for at least another 3 years. Is that right, Jenny?
And that's
Because are we 1 year into it? I think we're 1 year into it and it's a 5-year term. right?
Yes, just about a year.
Mhm.
It's actually a 7-year term, but it's a 5-year rate lock. And then I think there's a potential adjustment.
variable for the remaining 2.
Yeah, in
Yeah.
case we want to get out of the lease or anything changes for either side.
So then if there's no other questions on the budget, we can go to the capital improvement plan summary. And it's always a challenge determining what is going to break and when is it going to break. And I love this, that the city is going down this direction. I know in the years past, when we had our old sign, it wasn't a very nice sign. Mother Nature blew it down for us and we had to act on it. But for years before that, I kept saying, why can't we put $10,000 away every month to pay for that sign? And we're at that point right now where we can do stuff like that. And so I'm very excited about that. If we look at 2022, there's a lot of money in that, in the capital improvement plan that won't be spent this year. Because I don't like to just waste money, if it's my money or the city's money. But if it needs to be spent, then we will spend it. But we're not just going to replace a cooler because we want it to be blue instead of red type thing. And it has to make sense. So a lot of that money that's in here will get moved into future expenses that when they come up, we'll have the funds for that. But I did look at 2023 and we have predicted those expenditures. And once again, it's a wink, wink on the prediction. If we need to spend that money, we will. If we don't, we won't, type thing. Any questions on that? So actually, one more thing on this. What I want to do is, what we're going to do is take this to Schaefer's and get it a little clearer for the city and for Schaefer's on who is responsible for what item. And I think both sides will welcome that. I know some of the stuff is in the contract, but in the past, we've had a service door in the back replaced, and Ted mentioned that he replaced it because he felt it should have lasted longer, but he said technically it wasn't his responsibility. So, and I appreciate him doing that. And so does the city. But I think if we just have it laid out a little clearer, it'll just be better for both parties.
Terms of the contract you're referring to
For
in regards to
terms of
service?
our contract, yes, because I don't have it in front of me, but it states something like anything to do with the structural matter of the building that Schaefer's is responsible for it.
And Jenny, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a couple months ago, we looked at that where it was brought up.
Yep.
And it was not signed by the Schaefer family. Is that right?
We don't have a signed copy because Mr. Schaefer at the time had health issues.
Yep.
City attorney is staying on that to get that, but he had agreed to it and everything. So we're working on, we're operating off of the new contract.
Okay.
You would think that it wouldn't be as challenging to distinguish between some of these, who's paying for what, but sometimes just the smallest things, you know, are just vague enough to where we're not quite sure. And so does this list, Brian, reflect potential things that might be the lessor's responsibility, or would there be different things outside of this? Do you think this is our list of things?
Well, I put everything on here. So if you just look under entrance, it has a concrete floor. If the concrete floor would crack and it would settle 3-4 inches, then we don't have, it's not concrete, but I'm assuming that would be a Schaefer situation.
Okay.
And
Just like the sidewalk
pretty easily
did.
assumption,
Just like the sidewalk did.
right? And if you jump down, way down to the office, you go concrete. And then if you go to the showroom, it shows windows. I have nothing on that. It's the easiest way to figure out what I feel would be our responsibility and theirs is if you don't see any color after the description of the item, then I'm assuming that it's Schaefer's.
I think that's somewhat reasonable.
But we will be working on that to make sure that both parties are in agreement to it and get it a little clearer for us. The other thing that I did not go over, but we'll be going over more next month. So next Tuesday, the liquor committee is meeting and we are going to have our final prediction. We're going to get our final prediction for the pay scale for the part-time staff. And then we will have that on the budget for December for the council to vote on it. And those amounts are in my budget. All right, if there's no other questions, thank you.
I do, just sorry, one thing. I noticed that this year, 22, the other miscellaneous, there's 2 of them.
Yes.
Those are fairly large amounts,
Mhm.
and we're not having any of that for 2023. What were they for?
So to be real honest, we had extra money in the budget and I was just wanted it there in case something came up. Because I didn't have certain things listed in the budget. One thing, we are getting better and better at this sheet. I think this is year 2 on this sheet. So we're getting better at allocating funds to the right area. So last year was maybe just a little fuzzier in my mind. So I wanted to have some money there in case something came up in those categories. Nothing has. So the way I understand it is that money will get taken out of my expenditures for this year and put into a holding account if something comes up in that category.
Okay, so that'd be put into next year then, just in case
Well,
something came up.
it's not in next year's budget because it's in this year's budget. So it wouldn't come out of both budgets. It'll come out of this year's budget, but I
Carry it over.
I can spend it next year without it coming out of my budget.
Okay,
Did I explain that properly, Maggie? And I do want to definitely thank Jenny and Maggie for helping me with the budget. And without them, it wouldn't be this good, definitely. Was there a question from you, John?
Nope.
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
All right. The building matrix, I assume you all have this and have had time to look through it. I don't want to sit and actually read it to you probably too much. This is still a work that's very much in progress. It's not complete. So the three buildings that I've provided spreadsheets to you for are a first run at it. And they're showing how I intend to format that a little bit. I'm still working on some things with it, but I think it gives you a good idea of how this can function a little bit. It definitely works different than our vehicle matrix does. That's a little bit more cut and dried. You know, it's pretty easy to say a truck lasts 10 years. And in 10 years, you got to replace it. It has a residual value of trade in. Can't trade in a building or an old furnace in a building. So the first component I have of it in the first spreadsheet, many of you would see. Let's see if I can find it here. I have one that looks a little bit like this. And so what this says is it's an assessment worksheet. And so what I'll do is I'll take this through each building, usually in the spring of the year, and just walk through what needs to be fixed, what's broken, what's been replaced. I can add in numbers of things that we have replaced to make this more accurate. Right now, a lot of the numbers you will see on here are educated guesses on what things cost, like furnaces and things. Some things I could find online, a lot of things I couldn't easily find online. So I took a educated guess just to try to give us a ballpark number of what we should be putting away for maintenance. From that, I condense it down into a second spreadsheet that looks something like this. And what this does is it gives you a year by year picture of what we should have to spend on that building. And what I try to do with that, for instance, with this building, it's fairly easy to show this as an example. Yeah, okay, it's up there. you'll notice that furnaces, for instance, there's 8 of them in this building. So they're all the same age currently. They were all put in new. They all would theoretically at least fail about the same time. But I've spread the cost out over the next 8 years. What we could do is set up a fund maybe where that stuff is, where that money is stored. We can adjust the amount we put away each year up or down, kind of similar to the vehicle matrix, where eventually we want to get that flat number that we're putting away for that maintenance. I think this year our budget was kind of already set, so I didn't really set it based on this so much, but it does show that we're roughly in the ballpark with what we've been doing with that. The third component I have for the matrix is each year I'm going to do a status report for the budget. And what that'll do is it gives you a rundown building by building, what condition it's in, what I found, major issues with them. And then even the good ones. So you'll notice I put a building condition list. And so it's an inventory. Basically, it shows you what buildings we have. And the worst are first, the best, newest are last, of where the city should focus its attention. And you'll see at the top of the list currently, I feel, would be the Pickle. It's our oldest building. And most of its building systems have either met or exceeded their predicted lifespan. And so I suggest that either a remodel or a more likely a rebuild would be warranted. And as you move down the list, you'll see that the newer buildings, say like this one, that we have talked about a remodel project for this one. I wouldn't probably recommend a complete redo of this building, but certainly there are some issues with remodeling, for instance, the leaking roof here. And so I point that out, and you'll find that as I go through it building by building, I talk about the issues that are in here and what it might take to fix that. And then we get on to our newest building, for instance, the sewer blower building. There's nothing to do there. It's brand new. So we got a lot of years with that one. One thing that has kind of come about while working on this is, I look at general maintenance things like replacing a furnace, for instance, but you also start to look at, okay, if we're remodeling buildings or we're maybe in the case of the Pickle going to consider, should we build a new one at some point soon? Are there opportunities for what would I call it? Some efficiency, looking at some of the other buildings or new buildings, where those buildings are placed in town, things like that. And I think, for instance, there are some other opportunities with buildings that really aren't ready to be removed yet, but maybe they could be repurposed. And so I think the city could take a more in-depth look at how each building functions. And I haven't really done that with the matrix here so much. But I do think it suggests that we should maybe take a little more in-depth look, a workshop, I think, as Jenny had mentioned earlier, of what to do with these buildings and how to long-term maintain them. How do they best function for the city? With that, I guess I would look for questions or comments, thoughts.
I went through it. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah,
Thank
Yes.
you.
this is a
Comprehensive.
lot of work. This is very good, yeah.
A lot more to do, but I think it gives you a direction. It gives you some idea of where you could spend your time, what we should be looking to do going forward. But this is looking out very far. I'm looking out at least till 2031. But really, what we're looking at with certain buildings, next 50 years is really what we're talking about.
Right. And you have some good ideas in there, and I think those are some that we should look at pursuing.
Which goes back to what Jenny brought up about
Yep.
addressing this in January.
Yeah,
Not,
this would be a good start.
For any major building remodel or a rebuild, that's a 5-year project probably by the time from the time you start, just, hey, it's an idea like we are
Mhm.
tonight to you're actually putting some,
Right.
you're putting some foundation in the ground.
Mhm. Yeah. David?
We still got a generator in there 2 times. This is fresh memory on that.
For,
The,
Under electrical. City Hall.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's based off the original quote that we have from Pat
Right.
out of Shakopee.
yes,
Right.
yeah, I had to work with the numbers I had.
And I apologize. I did get reached out to by Holden Electric about a week or 2 weeks ago, and he told me that I would have the quote by the next day, and I had not received it, and I have not followed up yet. So I will follow up, see if he's thinking it should be cheaper, like I've been saying the past couple of months.
Any one system, at least for this year, I wouldn't get too hung up on any one number. It's more to give you as a building a picture of how much, what's a ballpark we should be spending for maintenance. I'm looking, Don, to see what you're talking about with the generator, but
On the City Hall building matrix, on the electrical line for 2020, for the remodel, and then for additionally 2023. 74.5 is there twice.
like I said, it was a work in progress.
Sure.
So,
Well, to me, that just was showing that we have discussed the generator as part of a potential remodel, and would that remodel happen in 2023? With some things that are needed in this building, with the roof and some windows and things like that. So I think it's not counting it twice, Don, but I can see why you're asking about that. But yes, we talked about it and wanted to make sure it was reflected in here somewhere as part of the conversation.
I think taking this report that you put together, pairing it with what we already have for the public, for Park and Rec's master plan, pairing with what we're gonna eventually have with the downtown master plan. That's gonna be the framework of a discussion that we can really kick off with once we have that master plan in motion. Prioritize what is most needed, existing, and then what is already based off of those 2 plans combined, what it could ultimately kind of look like.
I will kind of piggyback a little bit on what Don's question was, as far as the generator appearing in 2 places, and Jenny kind of talked about it a little bit too. As I started this, when I first started, it was really just to look at, okay, we got lights in here, what does it take to replace them? And then it started to work into projects, the remodeling project, it's almost a separate thing. It's not like when we replace a vehicle, that's the project. You're not overhauling it or anything. It's creating it and getting a new one. In this case, so it's looked at in a couple different ways now. Is there a project or is it just a maintenance item? So I had a little trouble separating the 2 and making it make sense. So hopefully I can have a clearer picture for next year that way.
Yeah, but this is a good start. Very good. And then again, where it's also too, because we're now want a generator that runs both of them or just one or whatever. And if you're gonna rebuild the pickle, can you work that into that bond or whatever? And kill 2 birds, 3 birds with one stone? I mean, like you say, it's a long project if you're gonna start to think about building. So,
Well, even with the remodeling projects or any of them, I think too, we look at the cost of the building and the systems within it. But I think there's also what needs to be considered are efficiencies, how it functions. How do the staff work inside of a building? If it's a more efficient design of a building or a remodel, will that maybe save us some money on staffing? There's a lot of opportunities, I think, when you look at some of this, so. And I don't really address that in here too much. So.
great. Anyone else? Anything? Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item we have in here is this. Or are you? The Lakes Area Food Shelf?
Yes, I'll do a rundown of the next handful of items, if that
Okay,
works.
I do have one thing I can on this, so I'll let
You-
you go.
Oh, well, I'll just start things off. Can I steal the mouse from you? Thank you. While I'm getting kind of set here, yes, I just wanted to let the council know I did receive this email from Kathy Adams from the food shelf. But once again, thanking the city for the contribution in 2022. Noting the increase in food costs that continue to rise and wanting to get information about future budget requests. And so I did provide her with our typical timeline for budget and said their requests that came in this year in late springtime was perfect timing for our budget process. But that I think I'm scrolling and there we go. But that I would also inform the council of this request that came through, considering you still have ARPA dollars and you still have an opportunity to incorporate this into the budget for 23 if you chose to do that. So I just wanted to put this out here for the council. Mayor Ryan, you had a comment on this?
Yeah, I did look at that and I contacted a couple of the area mayors and they've received similar stuff. They do not do this simply because there's a limited number of 501c3s that we can donate taxpayer funds to in the first place. The other reason they chose not to do anything with taxpayer funds, like the money we got from the feds was one thing, but for taxpayer funds was they just their councils, their cities came to the conclusion they didn't feel, I mean, where does it stop? Basically, what's the magic number type of thing? And that's money, even if it's $5,000, you know, there's money that we can buy equipment for a department with or something else that might come up. So that was just the feedback I got from two other of our neighboring communities. So just so everyone's aware.
That was kind of a thought process I had, just as you were about to make that comment. We were to even go to such lengths with other communities that have their constituents going to that food shelf, be considerate of also contributing as well, but I think John makes a great point. Where to stop all other 501cs in our neighboring areas wanting to probably do the same thing. Definitely understanding the need and be considerate of that. I would definitely agree with John on that.
Well, and I did actually mention to both of the mayors that, you know, if they were to look at ARPA funds, if they had some of their ARPA funds and they wanted to go together, like all of the cities that work in like here in this area, if we all wanted to pitch in a little more of that, say if we had it available in 23 as a donation from all of our communities for something like that, that didn't meet with a lot of positive comment. It wasn't a bad idea. They understood it, but I think that they've all pretty much got their ARPA funds spoken for. So, but yeah.
Okay, very good. I will, again, I did note the schedule and time frame for them to reach out to us. Next spring would be a good time as far as general budgeting is concerned. The next item I have is something that I probably should have, I'm gonna make this larger if I can. We should get formal council approval to set wages for non-union staff. As we have contracts settled for 2023 with our union staff, I would like just formal approval from the council, which is why I set this up as a special meeting so that you would have the ability to do that, just to ensure that the wages will be, as we have been discussing, the 5% cost of living, which is the same as the supervisor contract. And then I did ask for, or I am asking for clarification from the council. We talked about in September, I believe, looking at adjusting the health insurance contribution. And so there's two ways to look at that. Initially, the health insurance contribution amounts for single and family were proposed in the budget to mirror the supervisor contract. And the request came to consider looking at the contribution for single and family insurance to be the same within those those two items, meaning the 5% increase for the family as proposed would be reflective of the single as well. And so I wanted to, because we've been back and forth with a lot of the budget items. I wanted to make sure that I had clarity. Really, either way doesn't have a significant impact to the budget. I can make that work either way. It's just a matter of what you would like to see. Consistency wise, there's different ways to look at that. And I wanted to get the council's direction officially on that, so we can set those rates and get all the paperwork out to staff at the end of December, as we do typically before the new year. So I'm looking for a motion from the council on the wages, cost of living, and then option 1 or 2 for health insurance.
Let's take the wages first. Can I get a motion?
I move that we approve the 5% cost of living increase as presented.
No second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Health insurance. Option 1, under health insurance, the $840 for single, $1331.54 for family would be equal to what the supervisor's union contract has. If we go with the $862.43 and the $1331.54 option 2, that basically is the same percent increase to each of them. So I could entertain a motion on that, or unless we want to discuss it first. Any questions, any comments, any ideas, any thoughts? The only thought I have is to consider is if we go with option 2, guaranteed, because the supervisor's contract is up in 24 or up in 23.
Complete in 23, so we
Correct.
will be negotiating
Okay.
next year.
So you're automatically going to have them come to the table looking at a $22.43 increase, whatever percent that would be, on top of whatever else they might be asking for. Okay, so that's just something to think about. So, and you're going to be hard pressed, I think, to not do that. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, you're gonna be hard pressed to not do that. So I don't know what that equals. You know, it's not a large dollar amount in honesty, in all honesty. It's not like a deal breaker of any kind that I could imagine. But it's just, you know, out of the starting gate, when we come to offering things, you know, you know, you're pretty well gonna have to offer that. Boom.
All right.
So that's gonna be a done deal. I don't, unless something really weird happens, like the cost of insurance goes down. Who'd have thunk it? Don't worry about that. Anyway, so that's the only thing I was thinking of from a negotiating standpoint. So. No other ideas, comments, or thoughts, just I'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
And this is for either 1 or 2, correct?
Yeah,
Right.
one is equal to what the supervisor's got.
Yeah.
2 puts the same percentage, increases each cap by the same percentage.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move option 2.
I'll second it. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Okay,
Thank you. All right. The next item I have is just a reflection on the tax impact model that we have incorporated into our budgeting process. As I mentioned, when I sent out the agenda to the council, at our last meeting in October, the council gave staff a range of 12 to 13.48%. Obviously wanting to see it lower if possible, or on the lower end of that. And so we are able to hit the 12%. So the low end of that range. And I wanted to provide this worksheet for you that would reflect that 12% levy increase. I did also receive final market value of our estimated market valuations for the city from the county. And so the tax capacity is reflected here, which is final. In the close to the top right corner, you'll see the 35.8%. So that is a bit higher than it was 29% with the proposed numbers. So the final numbers for our valuations did go up even higher than we had originally thought. So that does impact the model as well. When we talked, I think September and October, but we were talking about a residential home, a $200,000 value, and that increase to $250,000 value. So kind of reflect a 25% increase in valuation. In October, with the 13.5% levy increase, my slide reflected a $78 increase in taxes owed for that homeowner. With this 12% proposal, that same number would be $41. So gives you a perspective on if someone had a $200,000 valued home going to a $250,000 valued home. With our 12% levy increase, they would see a $41 increase in their taxes due to the city. Well, hopefully it gives you some perspective on the dollars, since 12% is a significant levy increase. Just when you think about it, that we're not used to talking about levy increases consistently in the double digits. But I wanted to provide that to you and ask if you had any questions. I can ask if you have any questions on this information.
You mentioned something about that you were able to get to 12%.
Yes.
So what's the difference there from that 13? I mean, how were you able to get to that?
Yes, so I will, I'll kind of roll that into the next item. And Maggie and I met with all staff, final budget, and went through everything. And we were able to really look at, coming into most of a complete year at this point to know what we're spending and what we need to spend still. And then, what we did or didn't spend for this year. So there were a handful of items we were able to pre-purchase this year that we were able to take off of the budget. Parks and Rec will have their water heater replacement request coming to you. Our ordinance revisions in planning and zoning, we will have 50% of that billed before year end. So we were able to lower that amount. We were able to order barricades and new garbage cans in Public Works. The Axon evidence management system purchased with ARPA dollars. So we were able to take that off the budget, in the thermal imaging as well. So we were able to take that off the budget. We did those things as well as looked at, unfortunately, when we looked at utility costs through about October, they were much higher than we had even thought we had budgeted some cushion for. So we did increase those line items, but the work comp and property liability insurance estimates that I had kept very conservative, meaning I had high increases into the budget originally, came in much lower. Work comp will be 3% and property will be 4%. I was in the 10 to 12 range. I just had no idea what was going to happen with, especially work comp with PTSD claims and things that are happening. So that was something in our favor, but I think the utilities increase really negated that a little bit. But all departments went through and made sure that we were as tight as we could be and realistic in what we needed to do. And so that was in part how we were able to get to those numbers. I do also look at revenues, general fund revenues through as far along in the years I can to see how we're tracking. So if there's opportunity there where I can add revenues, then that helps offset the levy as well. So I have a summary for you, summary sheet that just summarizes the department totals for the year. So it reflects an roughly 8.5% increase in the budget, which translates into 12% for the levy. I have not heard or received any public comments from our citizens. I anticipate with tax statements coming out here by the end of the month, everyone will get that information and we'll see what that impact is, across city, county, school district. As a collective, it can be a significant impact, but until we see that and kind of evaluate, and depending on if you get feedback from the community, we can talk in December, or if you need to modify, you certainly have that opportunity as well. What I am looking for, I will hold on that. I want to talk about one other item if I could. But before we go tonight, I would like to have a council motion on the final levy recommendation, if you're comfortable with the 12. Again, this will just be so that we can prepare documents for December. You have until close to the end of December, truly, if you wanted to make a change and lower that again. But this would be just to allow us, for staff to know we're in a good place so we can prepare our documents for the Truth and Taxation meeting.
I'll make a motion.
You want to do that now?
Sure, you can, yeah, we can do that now. That's fine.
You prepared? Everyone read it?
You made a motion.
I'll make a motion to set the final levy for 2023 at 12%.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion? Don?
I'm still uncomfortable with 12%. I'd rather have it lower, because it's going to be a very stressful time next year in the economy, and not just in town here, but all over. And I think it's going to be pretty rough. You see more and more notices in the newspaper about foreclosures on houses already. And 12% to me is in 1 year. I understand it, but I'm nervous about it. I'd like to see, I can't tell you what I would do to change it, except I feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I don't think you're alone in that feeling.
Hmm.
And I think especially since where we started and where we have asked the city staff to get to this goal, and the creativeness to pre-purchase some of these items based off existing budgets for this year are definitely going to help, but it's an unfortunate cost of doing business, which I would hope that all of us here can do our best to explain, especially in the meeting coming in December. And consumer price index and producer price index is going down from its recent highs, especially as recent as today. So I hope to have hope on that front, but I echo your sentiment on that. Comment? Nope. Okay.
The only thing I see, I mean, I'm with Don too. The only thing I see that we could do, in all honesty, I mean, we can do it. I mean, we could get down further. We could have just, we've asked staff to put this together. We say, what do you need? We've, purchased things and put them off, got rid of things from next year's budget. We've done that on a pretty regular basis now. The only thing we have left to do is kick certain cans back down the road. I'm gonna beat up on Tom's department. We've been trying to budget $50,000 for how many years for those unexpected little projects that come up by the state and the county that they go, oh, gee, did we forget to tell you, you owe us this. We keep kicking that. We finally put 25 away. But, that fund would be close to 150,000 by now if we'd have done it, when we were starting, when we wanted to. So there's a can and kick that one back down the road. But, just like too low of increases, it catches up to you.
Mhm.
In talking to some of our neighboring cities, their turn is coming. I have a feeling where they're going to start seeing they're not going to be able to do what they're doing, or they're going to lose personnel. They're going to start, things of that nature too. So, but that's the only thing I can see that we can do differently. I would like to see it lower. I've talked to Jenny about it. I've been beating this one up pretty hard. I mean, I'd like to stay at 9, honest to God, but, how do you do it? You know, the energy costs alone and electricity and everything is going nowhere but up from here because as we can tell from the last election, we're going to be going more and more green. The companies are going to be getting pushed to do it, and they're going to have to increase their prices to pay for that infrastructure that they don't have. So I don't know, pay me now, pay me later. But Don's right, our economy here is the last to feel a downturn. And we're the last to recover from a downturn. That's one of our, that's one of the things we get to do. So I don't know, rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
But, and how many times have we asked people in town, let us know what you think? I mean, the website can't be easier to use, honestly. Even I can use it, so I know it can't be easier to use. I mean, the Bell system works. There's emails, there's text messages, there's a little bit of everything.
But people are not into stuff like we've gone through here until they actually get the bill.
Exactly. I
And
understand.
then that's when it hits.
Right. And that's what, but maybe those days are over. I don't know. Maybe they shouldn't. But I mean, we got to make a decision in X amount of time. We have deadlines we have to meet. And so I don't know. That's my 2 cents. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Thank you.
Okay.
Let me pull up one other thing quick.
So the only thing I would ask the council is, we all have to explain it to our constituency, let them know when they call us up and ask, this is where we're at.
Gee, I just normally say, gee, I don't know, call the mayor.
Right. It was the mayor.
Yeah, hey. What are they gonna do that I haven't already had done?
Yeah, right.
Oh, sure. Help me, Nancy, help me.
Okay, last item I have for you is something I just provided here before the meeting started. This is a work in process, just like everything, but I really wanted to find a way to bring together our budget, our strategic plan, and our comprehensive plan. So this is, like I said, a work in process. It's a draft. I wanted to get it in your hands, and I will get it out to staff as well for feedback in all areas, content, order, pictures, color. I mean, all those things. I want it to read easy. I want it to be helpful and help be a really good one-stop document for the council and for staff to use to really reflect that. So I'm just going to briefly go over the categories for you, just to orient yourself quick. This won't take very long at all. My plan is to have a final draft to you in December with your final budget approval. I envision there will be more to come with this. We'll keep continuing to build upon it over the next few years, just like we're doing with our long-range planning. So there's some initial pages. We have a history of Nisswa. I just lifted that mostly from our comprehensive plan, but I think it's good information and provides a synopsis of the history of Nisswa. Our organization, who our people are, what they do, our appointed and elected officials, what form of government we are, just for anyone who might be interested in that. I have an organizational chart to reflect our hierarchy, our department structure, things like that. I will be adding a budget message for December for the final document. I have a reflection of the budget calendar. So all of our meetings throughout the year. It's great to see we're getting towards the end of that, but I have just a summary of that. And then I talk about our comprehensive plan, what it is essentially as a summary, from the comprehensive plan document. And then I get into each strategy and have a summary of our year in review, 2022, what we've done. And then, so there's 6 categories. And then upcoming, we're annually working through those strategies, updating that. We have a spreadsheet to kind of reflect the activities. I have a nice picture of our getting to step 5 for Green Step Cities. And then I go into our strategic plan, what that is, what the components are, how that is connecting our budget and our comprehensive plan. And then for upcoming in 2023, so I took all the department strategic plan worksheets and summarized just in bullet, very succinctly, hopefully by each department, the initiatives and efforts that the departments are planning on embarking on for 2023 with our strategic plan. So I summarized that. I have some information on our levy, the components of that, and our estimated market value, so our levy history here, and then our market value and our allocation of property values by category. And then we start to get into heavier budget specific information. So that's summary citywide, which you're familiar with this format. So I did kind of tweak it a little bit for format as I'm trying to work on consistency with color and things like that. So it looks the same from page to page, but I have our general fund summary, our proprietary, our enterprise funds, our non-major funds, and then a total. And then the next handful of pages will summarize. So this is the general fund of revenues by category. And then the next 4 pages or so gives the operating budget expenditures by department. So for example, we have our mayor, city council, and we have categories. So I categorized personnel services, supplies, services, other capital, major buckets that I could use our account codes to say all basically like 100 account codes, personnel services, things like that. So it goes on through each department. So each department then total that will tie back to that summary sheet a couple pages earlier. So I'm just going to skim through that really quick here. I do the same for our enterprise fund. So that's the next category. The difference here is, for example, the pickle's the first one here. Then there's a revenue line for each enterprise fund. And then I summarize by spirits, by wastewater, and then a total for all enterprise funds, which then the total ties back to that summary page. I'm going to add a page on debt service, just some future payment schedules, things like that, what our debt service encompasses, what it was for, things like that. Our operating budget with our non-major funds, then with community center, same, it has the revenues there. And also it has 2 years of history, the current year budget, and then our future year budget. So parks, community center, fire, summary with those non-major funds. I have a summary page on what the capital improvement plan is, broken out by equipment, buildings, and infrastructure. And I'm not going to rotate it, but then we have, this is the summary, the high level buildup of all of those long range planning spreadsheets staff's been working on, summarized by department. So I have general fund, first category, enterprise funds, and non-major funds again. So I think that's going to be a really good snapshot. The first one is equipment specifically. And then we have buildings. And then this last one I'm working on a little bit to kind of fine tune. I'm going to actually rotate this one. Public infrastructure. So when we talk about Gull Lake Trail, next road bond, backage roads, things like that. How do we reflect what those projects are, the roundabout, what those initiatives might be? I have lift station 1 here, things like that. I think I have 2026 was our projected at this point. And then by what category of funding? City funds, federal, state, donations, grants, things like that. So I think that will help just to give the vision of what we're doing infrastructure wise for our community. And I've got some budget terminology that I'll just continue to add on going forward. Rotate that back. Oh, I don't know if I can. It's fine. And so that is this document. I welcome your feedback, thoughts, questions, anything, all of the above, before December. And I hope it's a good, useful document, and hopefully it will start to bring all of these things together that we're working on. So that's the goal. Questions?
The nice thing about this is it makes it very clear what's happening, and then it makes for a lot better discussions. And this in conjunction with the detail matrices that we're talking about, hopefully in the workshop, the capital expenditures as well as the maintenance for buildings. That makes a whole package and makes it a lot easier for us to make good decisions. So this is really nice.
Thank you.
The high level dissection I've had of it, I'm impressed, very impressed.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
job.
you. Great.
I doubt other cities have such nice staff like we have.
Yeah. Yes,
A lot of effort went in across the board. So it's, I think it's been a good process. Always room for improvement on the process. And we'll talk
Yeah.
we'll talk more about that early next year, I think, as we can kind of fine tune that. But otherwise, that is all I had for the workshop. Unless there's any other questions.
The only thing I want to say is thanks to staff for putting up with us with the budgeting this year.
Yeah.
I know it's been a lot of stuff we've been asking. It's a lot of stuff, but a lot of work on everyone's behalf, but it's helped me when I'm out in the public and people start addressing me and saying, why this, why that, why this? Well, I'll tell you. And you start explaining things like the maintenance on these buildings, that we have numbers and people are, what? I go, yeah, we've been trying to tell you, building it's the cheap part. If you want it, then it's got to be maintained, and then it's got to be replaced, and et cetera. So it's been a lot of help for me. So thanks, staff, please, for me. Okay. Motion to adjourn the special meeting?
Yes, and then in about 10 minutes, we'll canvass the election results. That takes just a minute or so, and then we'll have a few minutes before the regular meeting.
Does that count as an actual meeting?
Yes.
I'm gonna beat your record.
Regular meetings are different than special meetings, John.
I move that we adjourn the special city council meeting.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned.
We can have a lot of questions. It take a lot of time.
I know it. I knew it.
John, did you second that or did Mark?
Huh?
Second